We're here today to talk not about hatred, but about hope. We're going to talk about amazing grace because that's what it all comes down to. Grace and hope and a determination never to go back again. We're here to talk about what we can do. Because when it all comes down to it, that is the question Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wanted answered. What are you going to do? Now, Dr. King's legacy of hope and resistance gets lost. His call to action gets lost when people focus only on that aspirational beauty of his I Have a Dream speech. That speech was originally called Normalcy, Never Again. And it was not intended as a misty prophetic hope for some time. Because you all know sometime becomes no time, and that becomes never. We're not about never, we're about now. The Reverend William Barber and the Reverend Liz Theo Harris, co-chairs of the Poor People's Campaign, they write these words. Dr. King's speech outlined nightmares of oppression that gripped the nation. Dr. King reminded his audience that freedom had not been fully realized for Black Americans and many others, shackled by racist laws, trapped in poverty. And King was clear. He was clear that change wasn't going to come from some messiah or some politician, but a movement from the bottom up. Change was going to come from people like you and like me. Go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and the ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed, King declared. That's hope. That's faith in the ability of human hands to make a change. Reverend Barber writes, like Dr. King, we must refuse to believe that the great vaults of our nation are bankrupt. Reigniting the movement of poor people that Dr. King and others called for in 1968 is the best way to honor his legacy. We are doing what he said. Grassroots leaders in states across the countries building a moral movement to reclaim our nation's lost soul. And you could not choose a better group than the Poor People's Campaign to go investigate. If you want to feel some hope that we can do this, if you want to feel some grace, if you want to feel love, until we address the same systemic racism and poverty and militarism, ecological devastation and theological malpractice of Christian nationalism that Dr. King fought against, our nation's dream will continue to collide with the nightmare. William Barber wrote that. So for us sitting here, we start with belief. Like Dr. King, we have to refuse to believe that our nation is morally bankrupt. It isn't. We must believe that we can preach and teach and change. We have to believe that the soul of our nation can be found again and that we're going to help find it. We have to ignore the shallow understanding, the lukewarm action, and dive right in, holding our hope out in front of us. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, NBA Hall of Famer and best-selling author, writes, America, we've all shared the hope of the American dream, but some of us have had that dream deferred. We've all been inspired by the idyllic vision of a colorblind America, an America in which justice is a reality for everyone. But America, some have conspired to stifle that dream. Abdul-Jabbar writes, some of us see life as a crowded foot race in which the only way we can win is to hobble the other runners, particularly runners who don't look, think, worship, dress, or talk just like them. Some are under the impression that not everyone deserves to have an equal shot at their dream. America, we're in a shameful condition, he writes. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. helped us to acknowledge that 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. It's now 155 plus years since emancipation. We have an administration that targets the very people for whom King envisioned justice, who the Constitution is meant to protect and help thrive: people of color and women, an LGBTQ community, immigrants, others. It feels like an abusive relationship with your country. And those who perpetuate the abuse keep saying how much they've improved, how fewer broken bones and bruises there are, that everybody should be grateful. Fewer bruises are not our dream. We have hope. We have hope, and we have belief in a better dream than that. Our dream is to run as hard and as far and as fast as we can, handicapping no one, with only the wind and gravity and our own inertia to overcome. We don't want that dream deferred for another 155 years. So if we begin by believing we can change the world, by committing to changing the world, the next thing we have to do is begin to change it together, intersectionally, moving forward not to be a hero or a savior, but to work with the communities of the marginalized. Reverend Teresa Soto said it well when she said, each of us needs all of us to survive. And that is so true. We need every voice in this choir. In just a few minutes, we're going to join in singing a song that's come to be called the Black National Anthem. And when we do sing it, I want you to sing it not as a colonialization of a music to which you have no right, but as a lifting up of a promise that you'll make sure to work so that every voice is lifted up and heard. For those of you who identify as white, I ask that you sing it so that those of us who aren't white are not alone and isolated in this UU congregation. We want to stand with a great cloud of witnesses, held and supported by the work of our community. And there's a line in that song: we have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last where the white gleam of our star is cast. Those words recognize all of the bad, and they say that this is not the whole of the story, because the rest is about grace. When we're faced with the sheer size of the problems in the U.S., sometimes it seems insurmountable, but on June 17th of 2015, when that young man, Dylan Roof, a white supremacist, went to prayer service at Mother Emanuel, he sat with that congregation for over an hour. He opened fire. And 9 days later, like you saw in the video, President Obama delivered the eulogy of the minister's funeral there. There were times when his voice broke. He couldn't get through it. He went off script. The energy in that hall was just filled with pain, racial hatred. Nobody knew what to do. I was watching that day. Nobody knew what to do. And he put down his notes, and if you watch the video, and I highly recommend the real video, you see him put down his notes because he doesn't know what to do either. And so what he did was begin to sing Amazing Grace with no warning, no notes from memory, no music. He didn't warn the band. He didn't do it to look good. He wasn't on tune. And around the room, you saw people put down the things they had in their hands. There was some laughter. There was some shocked applause. Just like when we move forward with social justice work and we screw it up and we back up and we start again. He got the timing wrong. His voice wasn't trained, but he kept going. He started rough, but you heard a few voices out in the crowd pick it up, and then a few more. The musicians had no idea what tempo or key. They were scared, but then some stronger voices started to sing, and more people. Then the organ swelled, and it covered all of the flat notes, and the guitars joined in, and by now they had it. They were all singing Amazing Grace, and every voice was lifted by the end, and they were holding him up, and our president stood in front of that room, and he cried, and he sang, and so did everybody else. And they also laughed and applauded. Every voice, even though they got it wrong and got it right and screwed it up, but they were all in it together, and in that horrible moment, there was grace. Sometimes all that matters is that you try. You can do this work. Grant one another grace. We'll get it wrong 1,000,000 times. And we'll try 1,000,001 times to succeed, because we're going to make this a better world together. And we're going to make it. Blessed be.